As a sleep clinician, I'm always thinking about different ways that we can conceptualize insomnia disorder and distill it into a way that is easy to understand and helps resonate with people what this sort of idea of insomnia really is. And I started to think about insomnia disorder as, in some ways, like a phobia. It's like a fear of something. But in the context of insomnia, the fear is sleeplessness and its consequences. If you don't know me, hi, my name is Dr. Parthi Lau. I'm a clinical psychologist and behavioral sleep medicine specialist, and I treat patients with chronic insomnia using evidence based non pharmacological treatments. So, no use of medication, only changes to the way that we think about sleep and the way that we act towards our sleep. So, first of all, I want you to imagine the idea of someone with, let's say, a dog phobia or a fear of going on airplanes. What would they do in response to being near a dog or thinking about going on a plane? They would probably be, rightfully very, very scared, and they would engage in behaviors of avoidance. They would probably avoid the dog, or if they went on the plane, they would might, do a little drinking beforehand so that they're in a sort of inebriated state to kind of like quell the anxiety. They may take anxiety medication. They may do everything they can, both obvious and subtly, to try and get away from the anxiety. And if we were to conceptualize insomnia as this fear of sleeplessness and its consequences, you can imagine the same sort of avoidance behaviors or safety behaviors starting to happen as well. This person might start to put a lot of effort in their sleep. They might try to have this like very rigid routine to try and get some sleep to occur, to go to bed early, to stay in bed, to take a nap, to reduce their performance and functioning during the day or reduce their activities during the day to not have the impact of insomnia be so detrimental to their life, where they might cancel plans, they might not participate so much in work meetings, they might just kind of limit their lives so that insomnia doesn't necessarily take away from it. And to bring back the analogy about the dogs and fear of planes, like what do you think the behaviors of never interacting with a dog or never going on a plane might kind of impact their anxiety over the long run? And you would probably rightfully guess that this would probably maintain their anxiety. They would never sort of learn that dogs are okay or going on a plane, there's not really an issue, and the likelihood of danger is not commensurate with how much anxiety they're experiencing. You would kind of recognize that these subtle and obvious avoidance behaviors actually maintain the anxiety in the long run. And just the same, when we do everything possible to avoid a sleepless night, like putting in a lot of effort to make sure that our routine is perfect, to take medication if we start fearing that we can't sleep, to do everything we can to get a wink of sleep, that resistance and avoidance of sleeplessness or wakefulness in the middle of the night perpetuates our insomnia over the long run. And sorry for jumping back and forth, but if I were to ask you, like, let's say you're an anxiety specialist, what would you recommend the person, who has a fear of dogs to do? And you would probably say something along the lines of, well, I'd probably get the person to interact with a dog or to watch movies with dogs in it or look at pictures or imagine themselves interacting with dogs and then eventually getting up to the point where they're spending time with dogs so that they don't let their anxiety fuel their behaviors and maintain their anxiety in the long run. And just the same, when it comes to insomnia disorder, we need to do sort of the same thing when it comes to our phobia of sleeplessness. That if we can truly go into each night, not being sure whether we're going to fall asleep or be awake, but being okay and sitting with that sort of uncertainty, that's one pathway towards, at the very least, reducing the anxiety associated with potential wakefulness. We're not saying for sure you're going to fall asleep just because you said, I'm not going to worry about it. But at the very least, it's going to reduce some of the sort of distress associated with the anxiety, which puts us in a better position to be able to fall asleep. And the reason why I say put us in a better position is that sleep is fundamentally an automatic, effortless process. When we try to put effort into an effortless process, it's not like learning a piano where putting in effort is awesome and you're going to get better. Putting effort into sleep is going to have the opposite effect. So in this context, what I encourage you to do is to go into the night being willing to accept that, yeah, maybe tonight might not be so great. Maybe there might be more wakefulness than I prefer, but I'm gonna go into it anyway and not try and in some ways resist it and force sleep to happen, which usually just leads to sort of the opposite consequence. And in terms of daytime consequences, the research on comparing people with insomnia and people without insomnia on various types of functioning and performance suggests that there's actually not as much of a deficit as people with insomnia believe there necessarily is. It's just that there's a sort of subjective effort deficit. So the person with insomnia, everything is going to feel harder. At the same time, your performance overall remains relatively intact. And you might even be able to ask yourself, like, even on the worst nights, were you able to get the most important things done? Like, could you get most of your work done without too many issues? Could you take care of your kids? Again, yes, very effortful, but could you do it? And the answer, I'm guessing, is probably, yeah, like it was hard, but I guess I could do it. And that's the important part. We don't want to catastrophize that because I have insomnia, because I had a poor night, I can't do anything, my day is ruined. That even when I do struggle with insomnia, things are harder, but I am still very resilient. And being able to take that framework just a little bit will help to reduce the anxiety and allow you to really practice the strategies that will break you away from this insomnia trap. So we can think about insomnia as this disorder or problem associated with fear of sleeplessness. And our intuitive action to fix this sort of anxiety is to do everything and sort of take control of the situation. And control can work for grades, it can work for performance at work, it can work in many domains in our lives, but sleep is not one of those places where forcing control to happen necessarily leads to a good outcome. So even if it's hard, even if you're someone who's a little bit more on the perfectionistic side, who's a little bit more on the anxious side, see if in this context you can let go just a little bit of the control and allow sleep to take you away when you're ready. And if you're interested in learning more about different strategies and in some ways becoming your own insomnia therapist, I've written a book. It's called The Insomnia Paradox. It teaches you all the skills and ways of thinking about sleep and insomnia to become your own therapist so that you can provide a unique, personalized solution to your insomnia problem. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.